Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic. Let's go for a ride. Cross country drivers of Reddit. What is a terrifying situation you've witnessed or experienced? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was the passenger in this situation, but I think it still counts. It was almost more creepy than genuinely scary, but every time I think about it, I get chills. I was traveling back from a concert with my mom a few years ago. It was around 11 p.m., and we were on a main road which cuts through a lot of rural villages. We were about halfway home, and there wasn't another car to be seen in either direction. We were cruising along with the windows down when suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, a car without any lights on appeared and overtook us. Seconds later, the car had vanished. There were thick hedges on either side of the road, and no big ditches, etc. If the car had gone off the road, I would have thought Mum would have noticed it. It was just so bizarre. One moment it was there, and the next it wasn't. This happened to my mom. She was on a bus going to pick me up from a relative. A group of drunk men tried to take over the bus she was in. Thankfully, they were so drunk they started arguing with each other, and other passengers managed to take them down. One of them had a gun, but no bullets. Another one happened when I was just a baby. At a rest stop, a woman tried to steal me. When she was caught, she tried to play the victim, but thankfully there were other passengers who knew better. My SO is a trucker, and this happened to his trucker buddy. Buddy, call him A, and his co-driver are parked at a truck stop. A is in front, other drivers in the sleeper. A dude comes over and tells A the trailer doors are open. A starts to get out to go see, and his co-driver, who was a large man, comes out of the sleeper to see what's going on. Good Samaritan sees him, walks away, and gets in a pickup truck driven by someone else. A checks the trailer's door. They were shut. Seal intact. Hitchhiker pulled a knife on me in a rural stretch of highway. He forgot rule number 1, seatbelts. I slammed the brakes, and that pinned him to the dashboard, giving me enough time to get 3 good smacks with my jack handle in before he could peel himself off the dash and bail out of my still-moving truck. I still have his knife as a trophy. Well, when fight or flight kicks in, we have generally 2 choices to make. You chose to fight, and it worked out. Dangerous, but, in a life or death situation, you do what you can. Was bringing a friend from the Northeast and ran into a harrowing experience. I had a dual setup in my car so that I can have 2 phones mounted on the windshield. One phone for hands-free, the other for a dash cam. My friend was asleep, the 16-hour drive, and she was passed out smooth. About 4 in the morning, a white Honda comes swerving up in front of me on highway of I-95. Such a dark stretch of highway to go between towns, this driver started pulling the brake job. Popping the brake lights, I slow down, change lanes, and they did the same, as if they were trolling me in front of me. I changed lanes again. I was in the right-hand lane going really quick, increased the speed and hit cruise control, holding at 70 miles an hour. The driver jumped in front of me, hit the brakes, flashed to the left again, then got next to me. I turned the camera phone to the driver, and that was the end of it. The driver took off like a flash. I was driving late at night. Station wagon full of figure skaters. Most were my friends, grew up with them. We took turns driving from Brandon, MB to London, Ontario, with many stops in between. On a stretch of highway near Parry Sound, ON, I was coming up on a hill, and near the top in the moonlight was a full-grown elk. I can still see him. He was standing on the side of the road, and he'd obviously just jumped the guardrail and stood waiting for a moment before he crossed. I had no time to do anything. That car was overloaded, of course, and it was the 1970s, so not a modern suspension, etc. I just calmly realized that I was on the proverbial knife's edge. If he crossed in front of me, we were going to collide, and my sleeping friends and I were likely to be killed, or at least badly injured. I went by him, muttering under my breath, "Stay right where you are, USOB. Stay right where you are." He did. As I passed him, I took a quick glance in the rearview mirror, and he bolted across 2 lanes, over the center barrier, and into oncoming traffic going the other way. I don't think he got hit. He was definitely fortunate as I was. I drove for an hour afterwards and didn't freak out until I stopped for coffee. I still have the dreams, only this time I hit him, of course, and all our lives change in an instant. Life is precious. Was driving a short bus of kids through horrendous traffic outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Finally see the holdup. Huge RV had rear-ended a tractor-trailer and caught fire. The entire front third of the RV was melted to the asphalt. My first thought was, dead. They're all dead. My thought years later, Jesus Christ, they were melted to the asphalt. Was behind this big truck with a trailer full of flaky wood chips. It was like driving in a snowstorm of big flaky snow. Did this all day until I saw this dinner sign. The truck pulled over too. The truck had been full. Now the flying flakes had thinned down. I got in the diner first and was waiting for them to take my order. The truck driver came in and he sat in the booth next to me. I ordered and went to the can. On the way back, I stopped and told the trucker I was behind him on the road. Then I said, "I see that you lost your load." The trucker jumped up and ran outside. He came back in and was on the phone. He was saying, "Someone stole my load again. They took it while I was driving." To him, it was a mystery. I was driving a 16-ton truck on a regional highway in Australia and had a moment where I thought I was going to end up in a multi-truck pileup. Once you get a bit outside of suburbia, even the major highways are often only 2 lanes, one each way, since there really isn't the traffic to justify 1,000 kilometers of dual carriageway. To try and save the poor people stuck behind trucks that are often speed limits to 100 kilometers per hour, even in a 110 km/h zone, there are occasional overtaking lanes where an extra lane is added to one direction to allow an overtaking opportunity without crossing onto the other side of the highway. For the purposes of my rambling tale, it's worth understanding that the extra lane is added on the left with the overtaking lane to the right in the middle of the highway. This is Oz after all. Which means that when the overtaking runs out, everyone in the slower left-hand lane will need to move back into the right-hand lane. So if you aren't finished overtaking, you'll need to let people merge back into the right-hand lane. Got it? Anyway, on the day in question, we were fighting a massive headwind, so all the heavy vehicles were having a hard time keeping speed up, even with the nose cones. I'd ended up in the middle of a pack of road trains and B-doubles, so my tiny little MR truck certainly wasn't going to be playing overtaking games today, but everyone was playing nice and leaving appropriate gaps. There were a few cars that would play leapfrog to the front of the line using the CB radio, but not everyone is that keen to mix with the big trucks. So every time we hit an overtake, a solid stack of cars would get past us, but the extra lane doesn't last forever, and the convoy was developing a decent comet tail. Eventually, we hit another overtake on a slight rise, which meant the convoy was only getting up to about 90 kilometers an hour, which makes it a perfect opportunity to clear some of the tail. All of his trucks move to the left, and the giant line of cars speed up to pass us. I'm third in line behind a B-double and a tanker road train, with a decent collection of trucks behind us, so it takes a moment for the cars to get up to the front of the line. Everything seemed to be going to plan, until the lead car of the overtaking Comet gets just past the front truck, and decides that he's had enough overtaking for one day and matches speed with the convoy. So now we have the right lane with a solid stack of 15 cars, 14 of whom are expecting to overtake us, matching speed with the left lane of giant trucks as we approach the left lane ends. 500-meter sign that means us trucks either need to get back over to the right or hope that our rigs are ready to audition for Dakar, as the left lane vanishes and turns back into scrub. I guess the third option, which is kind of part of the first option, is to pull back into the right lane and force the cars onto the wrong side of the highway. Short version, none of this is looking good. The lead truck starts laying on the air horn while yelling on the CB, but the tiny station wagon continues along in blissful ignorance to the chaos unfolding behind them. Almost as one, the convoy of trucks realize that our nice country drive has gone full yeah nah, and we're all on the fast track to destination Eft, and a chorus of engine braking fills the desert. Followed by the screams of tortured brake pads and smoking rubbers, the convoy came to a complete stop. Thankfully, everyone was keeping a reasonable distance, and as far as I could tell, nobody made contact, but after a crash stop from 90 clicks to the 2-meter gap I had left looked really bloody small. In the mirrors, I could see all kinds of chaos in the clouds of smoke as the car sped past us, but there wasn't anyone driving the column up my backside. As the right lane cleared and we all slowly pulled back out one by one, I realized that my passenger, definitely not a truck driver, was still white-knuckling the Jesus bars with a look of terror on her face. We'd actually been having a chat earlier about how unobservant some drivers can be on the open roads, and she commented that despite thinking she'd been watching the road, she had no idea what was going on until after it was finished. So I guess I made my point? Anyway, TLDR. Idiot car driver almost causes multi-truck pileup on the highway. Only manages to cause toasty brake pads and smoky tires. Oh, and probably a few messy driver seats. As a daily commuter, I see some of the worst driving, as most of you do as well. Hopefully you're not one of them. But it sometimes amazes me that people can be so ignorant of the things going on around them. But they continue to do it. For context, I'm a girl who was alone almost the entire time in a tiny 1998 Honda Civic. I'm pretty intimidating most of the time, being 5'10" and goth with a strong resting bitch face. Hi. I drove from California to Colorado, then from Colorado to Virginia a few months ago, then from Virginia to Texas a few months after that, then came back to California a couple of weeks ago, Blue Heart. In the Nevada desert, northeast of Reno, I stopped at a gas station for a refuel and to pee, then saw a bunch of men in suits standing around a couple of old gray Chevy SUVs, peeling paint and sunburnt window tint. When I pulled up, they stared at me the entire time I was getting gas, and they stared at me until I was out of sight. That was probably the creepiest thing I came across, to be honest. In Utah, I was almost run off the road by a trucker who veered into my lane. He was all over the road for as long as I could see him, some form of drunk, high, distracted, or sleepy. It was insane. In Colorado, going over the Rockies, my car wasn't enjoying climbing the mountain and wouldn't accelerate unless I was in second gear, and it capped at 50-ish miles per hour. I was in the emergency lane with my flashers on, and I still almost got rear-ended a handful of times. Also, in Colorado, I accidentally got onto a service road and almost hit a bear. Not fun, lol. In Kansas, I stopped at a diner and got stared at by a few old guys until I left. I didn't dine in again after that. I'm not up for fighting a group of old men. Old man strength is a real thing, and I don't F with it. In Missouri, a guy kept pestering me about being a Satanist and witch while I was getting gas and snacks. I told him that if he didn't leave me alone, I'd put a hex on him, and he slinked away after that. The cashier, who overheard, was giving me the death stare and didn't tell me to have a good day. In Kentucky and Tennessee, I got tailgated by trucks whose front ends were higher than their beds, which was especially weird because I think the only thing they could see of my car was my roof box. In Virginia, people were just plain unkind. I started toning down my gothness there and had a much better experience. In Louisiana, I stopped at a gas station and the tiny old guy sitting on a rocking chair outside said that I was pretty effing crazy to drive that dinky little car, and that he'd climb me like a tree if he had the chance. The only weird thing about Texas was finding a 75-mile-per-hour non-freeway road and getting pulled over because I couldn't go that fast uphill. The police officer laughed at me and told me to put my flashers on if I wasn't going the limit or higher and let me go. In Arizona, my car broke down, so I pulled over, and the amount of people who wouldn't get into the other lane when there was no one else on the road was insane. Move over, people. That little bit of consideration saves lives. I did get my car running again. There was a blockage in the intake manifold. In Southern California, I paid $7 a gallon for gas at one point. I stopped at a rest stop a few miles south of San Francisco, and my car was the oldest, worst-looking car there. In general, the amount of times I got leered at or asked for favors is disgusting. All across the U.S., no change. Effing ew, dirty mother effers. All in all, it was a pretty great learning experience, and I've seen a ton of absolutely gorgeous areas and people. I've had a ton of different foods and seen things I never imagined. It was wicked cool. Pulled off the road at 10 p.m. to grab food in Maryland. The places in town were closed and the GPS routed us back to the highway. Instead, it drove us through a development that was almost deserted. And at the end of this route was a cul-de-sac, where there was one car in a driveway, and as we got on the street, every light in the house lit up. The radio was all wonky and the GPS said U-turn, and I floored it and didn't let off the gas till I was in Delaware. I, 23 female, whip out the old vibrator when the road is empty. Boring. I'm on cruise control and need something good. I generally wear a skirt for long drives for this. in a small car, Ford Focus, and a trucker saw. He proceeded to tailgate me, then pulled alongside my car blasting his horn, doing this back and forth for 10 to 15 miles or so. I, of course, stopped when he started this. I was in the middle of nowhere, terrified. No cell reception and no GPS. It was 2004 or 5. Luckily, a small town came up, and I figured if I went to a public spot like a hotel or McDonald's, I could wait a while until they were long down the road. Even better, saw a sign for a fire department. I pulled off, he pulled off. Maybe thinking I was going to a hotel, I don't know. I was in tears by then. Pulled into the fire department, intending to go in for help or get the police. The trucker entered the parking lot just after me, saw I was heading inside, and immediately did a U-turn. I reported what happened, waited a long time before going on the road, and never saw him again. Okay, not trying to sound insensitive, and everyone has a right to do whatever they would like. That being said, if you're using a vibrator to massage yourself, and a truck driver sees that, they're going to kind of want to see more. So following you, bad. But looking at you doing that, I mean, am I wrong for thinking that you shouldn't do that while driving? I got followed all the way from a friend's house to a gas station. I saw them go in the store and continue staring at me, so I took the opportunity to leave and go to one closer to home, about half an hour away. Just as I was done pumping my gas there, they pulled in. I was lucky that a cop was sitting there, so they didn't follow me from their home.